But we're going to start with the news that Felipe Massa has begun legal proceedings against the FIA, Formula One management, and Bernie Ecclestone over the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. The race was won by the Renault of Fernando Alonso, as I'm sure many of you know, largely helped by the safety car brought out as a result of a crash by Alonso's teammate, Nelson Piquet Jr. The following season, it came to light that this crash was intentional to help Alonso win. However, as the 2008 season was already wrapped up, no action regarding the race or championship occurred. Massa himself scored no points at that race following a botched pit stop that happened under that safety car. A key reason, of course, why he didn't go on to win that year's title. The reason this has come back to the forefront of F1 over 15 years after it happened is a series of comments made by Bernie Ecclestone last year indicating the FIA did know enough about this plot in 2008 to review and take action. Massa and his team have released a statement including the following. Mr. Massa is seeking declarations that the FIA breached its regulations by failing to promptly investigate Nelson Piquet Jr.'s crash and that it had acted properly. Mr. Massa would have won the Drivers' Championship that year. Mr. Massa also seeks damages for the significant financial loss he has suffered due to the FIA's failure. So obviously we've known about Massa's involvement with this for about a year, again, since Ecclestone's comments, but this is now Massa has pressed go, essentially, on the legal proceedings. What are your thoughts on this, Sam? Do you think Massa is entitled to any compensation here?
It's such a tricky situation, and we'll prefix this that all three of us are not particularly legal-minded, right?
Speak for yourself, all right?
Right, okay. Two of us aren't qualified lawyers. Right, so yeah, this is tricky. This is really, really difficult. And I think he's got every right to be a bit peeved, to be, have some problems with the situation. The thing that you work all your life for, you commit yourself to, so much time and effort and energy and money, whatever, goes into this one thing. And he had one proper crack at being the very best in the world at it. So you've got every right to think, oh, I'm quite annoyed. That's not gone my way, and I'm quite annoyed about it. You know what, folks? Before I get into that, I've just got to close Discord because Kirsty will crucify me if that goes off again.
Well, Harry will crucify you today.
Yes, Harry, the editing man.
And I won't because I don't care.
Oh, I love this regime. Anyway, Massa has every right to be annoyed, right? I think I'd be annoyed. He's got every right to have a grouch about it. And I think if you found out years down the line that someone knew that it was malicious or had wrong intent behind it and had the power to act on it and didn't because reasons, because Bernie Ecclestone, don't know, I'd also go, well, why? Because you took away my dream, you took away a massive opportunity and a way of stepping up and succeeding. So he's got every right to be annoyed. I don't know how much I agree with the actual lawsuit. The money that he's requested is a gigantic sum and feels very much like a speculation. I'm sure it is an educated speculation, but it's a speculation. You've got no realistic understanding of how much money he would have made seasons over. I know some of it is partly due to a sponsor bonus that he would have been paid out had he won the title, but not all of it, but some of it definitely is. And that is fine if that was just the amount that he would have been owed, fine. And then there are, of course, many other factors that would have come into play had the decision been made, let's say, straight after Singapore. Firstly, the Ferrari pit stop was still an absolute failure. There's a shock, folks. Ferrari's pit stops being a failure still happened back then. And it was a really botched pit stop. It did not go well for him. Does he recover anyway? You know, the pit stop might have happened under normal conditions and it might have been even worse. It might not have been a safety car to allow him to have any kind of rectification. Who knows? If that did go to plan, maybe Lewis Hamilton does something differently later on in the season to secure a different result. You don't know what's going to happen with these kind of results, and it's very pick and choose and kind of, you go back in time, you change one thing and the whole of the future changes in front of you. You don't really know what it might affect. So yes, he has every right to be annoyed. I'm slightly apprehensive that this is going to open a very, very large can of worms that I don't know how valid it is. Should he get the agreement and the desired outcome that he wants from this?
What were your initial thoughts on this news, Harry?
Yeah, I'm with Sam. It's such a, and again, I like Sam said already, I understand the grievance that Massa has given this new information that's come to light. As we've touched on this before, though, your source is Bernie Ecclestone, which, as sources go, isn't the strongest, I don't think. But I sympathise and I understand. But like you said, Sam, anything you're basing this off like ifs, buts, and maybes, and anything else could have happened that season after Singapore. Say he had won Singapore, something else could have happened after that because it's like you're going back in time and changing the course of history. It's you've got no idea how it plays out. So I understand as well if there's lost sponsorship money, at least there's something a bit like tangible there. But the rest of the sum, as you say, just seems a bit like they've plucked it out of thin air. It's such a hard, like it's not like where there are damages to a reputation or to a person. It's very hypothetical as a case, and as you say, Sam, it could open a can of worms about other, not just in F1, but other sporting results, I guess. I guess this one is quite specific, given that it was found out that there was a deliberate action to change the result of a race or result of a sporting event in this case. Whereas other I'm not going to mention any, but other races, other events, you could argue it was, we don't know whether that was the case or not, but it just seems very, very hypothetical and not just quite a weak case in my view. But we'll see how it goes.
I think with the money element of it and how much they're putting, how much he thinks he's entitled to, it's very difficult because I agree they probably have mostly plucked a figure out of thin air. Equally, there's not really another way to go about it in that you just don't know. And if he feels like he's entitled to something, then you've got to make some sort of guess. And who's to say? Again, it's really difficult. Who's to say from like media opportunities and I don't know whether it would be like commentary opportunities, like the value of being a world champion versus not a world champion. How much does that mean? I haven't got a clue, but I'm the same as everyone else. I don't think anyone has a clue. But I can understand them putting a figure to it. But like you say, I think they can be far more exact about the sponsorship bonus, but they don't want to discard other things that they might have missed out on. The first thing I did want to say about this point, and to be honest, it's largely stolen from, and this is another amazing plug, folks. This is largely stolen from Harry Eads' point that he made on our 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix historic review, which you can listen to now on Patreon. But Harry made a very good point, which is after the race, Felipe Massa was incredibly gracious towards Lewis Hamilton, incredibly understanding of what had just happened. And I really hope that this lawsuit doesn't take away from that, in that I still believe Felipe Massa is as magnanimous as he was over 15 years ago towards his competitor about the situation from a sporting perspective. I don't think this should take away from that in any way, shape, or form. In terms of whether he's actually entitled to anything here, I think his issue is this is all based on the assumption that the race would be cancelled. And that's if that assumption goes, he's got really nothing to his case. And I personally can't quite understand why they would do that. So just to get everyone up to speed on the point situation, Lewis Hamilton beat Felipe Massa by 1 point at the Brazilian Grand Prix, 98 points to Hamilton, 97 to Massa. If you were to take Singapore out of the equation, Felipe Massa still is on 97 because he doesn't score points in that Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton gets a podium in that race. He finishes third. So 6 points taken away from 98. He has 92. Massa wins the title by 5 points. The thing I don't understand is I feel like the obvious thing to do in this situation, if you found that there was reason to disqualify the Renault team, why wouldn't you do just that? Because if you disqualify Fernando Alonso from this Grand Prix, obviously you could disqualify Piquet as well. Doesn't really make any difference to the points. Lewis Hamilton actually goes up 2 points to 100 because he claims second rather than third, and Massa still doesn't claim any points. So this whole legal proceeding is very much based on the race would have to be cancelled for this to have any impact, and just disqualifying the Renaults, which I feel like is the more obvious route to go down, wouldn't actually help Massa. It would in fact hinder it. In a weird way, it would then make the last lap overtake by Hamilton on Glock completely meaningless, but that's a point for another day. I mean, there aren't really many examples of this in F1 history, but if you were to look back at, I'm going to go back a fair bit, 1984, Tyrrell that year, driven by Martin Brundle and Stefan Beloff, they were naughty. They were very, very naughty because you couldn't refuel back in 1984, and they found irregularities with the water. It was the impurity of the water was an issue. They were essentially refueling the car and disguising it by
We're just
topping it
putting
up
we're
with
just
water.
putting water in it, guys. Don't worry about it. Just a bit of water.
Anyway, point being, that happened for the first 8 races of that year. That was half the season back then. Did they just cancel all first 8 races? No, they didn't. They didn't just say, right, round 9, we're starting from scratch. They disqualified the Tyrrells from every single race they were in. So it was brutal for Tyrrell, but it wasn't brutal for anyone else. And I unless someone can tell me otherwise, I don't know why they wouldn't just do the same thing here.
Another example, of course, is 2007 when McLaren stole secrets from Ferrari, right? And in fact, it was found to be such an advantage and illegal that they were disqualified from the championship. So again, would you cancel every single race of that season because they took part in them all? No, you just remove their results because they're the team that are affected, and everyone else just moves up one spot. Again, it feels like the very logical step to make here.
Yeah, and look, I think if it's found out that there was enough to investigate, and Bernie Ecclestone is true to his word, which, as we know, is 100% always the case. If there is found that there was enough to investigate in 2008, then yes, Massa has a right to feel aggrieved. But I think the whole sport has a right to feel aggrieved at that point. And who's to say that Massa's the only aggrieved party in this? I mean, surely, you could argue in that case, maybe Nico Rosberg is the aggrieved party. He finished second in that Grand Prix. He had to wait another 4 years before he won a race. His first win came in 2012, the Chinese Grand Prix. Who's to say winning a race at that point, what could that have done to his career? His career ended up pretty well anyway, but I don't know. I don't think you can just nail down Felipe Massa as the only person who's aggrieved here. And again, it's all based on the assumption that the race will be cancelled, which I can't quite understand.
Now, of course, a legal proceeding like this, if it were to go ahead, the can of worms that I spoke about and what Harry very much alluded to is the very more recent situation of Abu Dhabi in 2021, of course, that in theory, we've mentioned it, in theory, there is going to be some form of legal case that there was an interference and not a following of the rules that were set out by the FIA at the start of the season, because we know that they weren't adhered to in the correct manner. Does it allow someone like Lewis Hamilton to turn around and go, I was robbed of a championship, rules weren't followed, I'm going to take you to court? Does that allow multiple instances of this throughout history to become a case? Does technically someone from Jeddah last year, if it is proven that Ben Sulayem interfered with Fernando Alonso's penalty, go, well, I should have had a podium or something like that because we didn't follow the rules and it was tampered with. I'm going to take you to court. Does it open this gigantic door for legal cases to flow through?
Weirdly, in the Abu Dhabi instance, I don't think it does. But maybe in the second one, I think it does. Reason being, this is all based on information that we have now that we didn't have at the time. Whereas I think with Abu Dhabi, as controversial as it was, all of the information was known at the time and nothing has unfolded since then that would point to this wasn't made aware of and this changed things. I mean, the Ben Sulayem instance, yeah, I think in that instance, we didn't know something at the time and maybe we do know something now. But yeah, I mean, it does certainly open the door for things that weren't known at the time and weren't investigated at the time. But and Bernie Ecclestone saying, actually, yeah, we did know more than we let on.
Yeah, I guess the same could be so many examples. Like the Ferrari engine at Monza or Belgium, where everyone had a secret word, it was swept under a rug, and no one else. Definitely a legal engine. Sorry, yes.
I think you're talking nonsense
there.
I think it's absolutely fine.
It's definitely, I'm sorry, everyone. It's definitely legal and correct, and they didn't suddenly stop having that ability after that race. Never mind, we'll move on.